And after Raven created the earth, the Creator made the first human man from a pea pod on the beach. Then the Creator made the first woman, and the first woman gave birth to 2 children at a time, a man and a woman fully grown. They were sent off as soon as they were born to create other villages. Then the Creator began to make all living things on the earth and below it, as well as creatures in the sea and air. One by one, all living creatures were made. The first man gave all the animals their names. The Creator showed the first man what each animal was to be used for. The Creator finished making all living things on earth, in the sky, and under the earth. The first man thought that the Creator was through, but the Creator told the first man that he had to make one more animal. I know you because I created you, the Creator said to the first man. If I do not create one more animal, you will destroy the earth. So the Creator took the soul of a jealous Yupik woman and created the grizzly bear. Molly Marie Andrews' life experiences have been typical of small towns everywhere, and especially for young women from rural Alaska. Born and raised in a small Yupik Native village in Bristol Bay, her older sister nicknamed her Utsa when she was 5 for all the berries that went into her mouth instead of her bucket. She graduated from her local high school with a class of 6, and after a year in Anchorage attending business school, she returned to work as an assistant to the tribal administrator. She shares her grandmother's family home with her sister, who is away at college, and her younger brother, Will, who thinks it's his job to watch out for her. Utsa is close to her family and, as usual for a small town, is related to half the people in her village. She feels comfortable and safe here, not like she felt in Anchorage or other big cities. She had no way of knowing that the person most likely to hurt her is someone she knows or someone right in her home village.
In rural Alaska, our villages, we don't have a lot of strangers. If there is a stranger within an hour, the whole village knows who you are. And so it becomes a very trusting place. It's a comfortable, trusting place. And we just don't expect anyone that we know to hurt us. Yet, rape is something that is a tragedy that occurs everywhere. And in rural Alaska, many of us believe that it's an act that a stranger forces upon someone. It's a physical act of threatening with knives. But it's someone weird. But those aren't the facts. The facts are more that it's going to be someone that knows you and that we know. Rape is more an act of opportunity or habit.
Utsa's cousin and a friend come to visit and tell her there is going to be a party over at Uncle Jimmy's house later tonight. She wants Utsa to go with her, but Utsa is reluctant because her brother Will tells her there'll probably be a lot of drinking going on. Her cousin promises to make sure they don't drink too much and to watch out for each other at the party.
I just didn't want her to go. They're always talking about getting drunk and getting some girl in the sack. I just didn't want it to be my sister.
Like many young people in rural Alaska, Utsa has been exposed to alcohol and heavy drinking since early childhood. By the time she left the village to go off to college, she had been drinking steadily, but decided to stay away from alcohol in Anchorage because she sensed it wasn't safe. Now that she is back home with friends and family, she is caught up in the laughing and talking and doesn't realize how drunk she was getting. When she starts to feel tired, she tells her cousin she wants to go home. But Tina isn't ready to go and tells Utsa to go lay down in the back room. As she moves off, one of the men who has been watching her follows her into the bedroom.
Sexual assaults tend to happen when there's a party and there's alcohol. And more frequently than not, the victim is unconscious. And it becomes an opportunity for some to sneak in and rape a victim, and they generally don't even feel that they're doing anything wrong. No one's being hurt that they can tell. But the fact is, emotionally and spiritually and physically, rape is one of the most violent acts that can be perpetrated on anyone.
Utsa's brother is worried when his sister and friends are out so late, so he goes to the party looking for her. No one seems to know where she went. He knows she hasn't come home and decides to look around the party house. When he opens the bedroom door and turns on the light, he goes to Utsa and helps her up. Will takes Utsa to his Aunt Betty, who is the village health aide, because he knows she'll know what to do. After he drops her off, he goes to find the village public safety officer, the VPSO, and tells him what happened. The health aide comforts Utsa and performs a quick exam to see if there are any obvious injuries that need immediate treatment. They talk around the edges about why she is here. They both know what's happened, but aren't ready to talk about it. When the VPSO comes in, he tells Utsa that it is best to have a complete medical exam at the hospital in Dillingham, where she can be interviewed by a state trooper who will be doing the actual investigation.
VPSOs serve as a first responder for the Alaska State Troopers to certain types of emergencies, including sexual assault. They are the first responders, and they take a preliminary report, and they do field work for these state troopers and do some basic interview for the state troopers. We will make sure that the crime scene is secure, that victims are in a safe situation, and that the Alaska State Troopers have been notified and informed.
The VPSO called ahead to SAFE, the regional sexual assault agency in Dillingham, and an advocate went out to the airport to meet Utsa as she flies in from the village. On the way to the hospital, the advocate talks with Utsa about the medical and forensic exam to make sure she understands what her choices are and how she can express them. The advocate knows that one of the most traumatic things about a sexual assault is the violation of a person's sense of safety, privacy, and control. Helping the victim to reestablish the right to make choices and control their surroundings begins the healing process. The Bristol Bay region is served by a sexual assault response team known as SART, located out of the regional hospital. In cases involving sexual assault of an adult, the team consists of a trained sexual assault nurse examiner, an advocate, and a police officer or state trooper.
It's important to tell the victim that they aren't alone, that this has happened to many women, and many women don't report it. Many women think it's their fault, especially if they were drunk. But the fact is that it wasn't, and it's up to them if they want to go through with the exam, and it's up to them if they want to take it to the next level.
When Utsa arrives at the hospital, she is greeted by the nurse who will be doing the forensic exam and a state trooper who will be investigating the case.
SAFE is generally notified as soon as the trooper knows that something's going on in the village. We'll contact SAFE and let them know we're responding to a reported sexual assault. We ask them oftentimes for assistance in activating SART, contacting the hospital, and letting them know that we have a victim that may be transported down for a SART examination. And then once we get to the village and gather up the basic facts of the case, We oftentimes will call the SART nurse and explain to them what we have so they can prepare once the victim arrives.
After the examination, Utsa is given prophylactic antibiotics to prevent infection from venereal disease and is offered emergency contraception to prevent pregnancy. She is also offered an HIV test and is told that it will not yet show whether she was exposed to HIV during the assault. She will need another HIV test within 3 to 6 months to determine if she has become positive. There is no way to protect her if she was exposed to the HIV/AIDS virus.
Alaska has rated highest in the nation once again in sexual assault and child sexual abuse. In the Anchorage population, Native women make up 3% of the entire population, yet we're 400 times more likely to be assaulted than any other group of women, and we're 60% of the rapes. When we have a police department that fails to respond, and prosecutors and some news media and even juries that focus only on the woman's lifestyle because alcohol is usually involved in sexual assault. When we see the victim not only blamed for being raped and sometimes killed, we also see the victims mocked or made fun of by those who are purported to be Native leaders. And we have to ask, why?
It's late at night and Utsa hasn't slept in over 24 hours. The advocate takes her to the shelter where she can rest and get something to eat. Utsa feels out of place and embarrassed to be there. Seeking peace and quiet, she asks to go right to her room and crawls into bed. Over the next few days, Utsa will stay at the shelter. She is reluctant at first to join in with the other women because she doesn't know anyone and is still in shock about being assaulted. Slowly, she begins to open up and is welcomed into the family the women have made for themselves and their children in the safe environment of the shelter. Utsa gets a call from her cousin Tina, who tells her that her friends are really angry about her making a report, and all were talking about how she was coming on to the guy at the party. She tells Utsa she should drop the charges and not make it a big deal. Utsa participates in a women's support group at the shelter. She tells the women what happened in her village and says she feels bad about reporting it and making trouble because she feels responsible for that night. She finishes by saying it wasn't a big deal anyway.
I told Molly that I was mad at her for saying those things and that it was a big deal, that that man had no right to do what he did to her. As a matter of fact, the same thing happened to me, and I said it wasn't a big deal to the bottom of a bottle for 15 years until I went to treatment and realized what a big deal it was. I was so humiliated and ashamed that no one has a right to do that.
The next day, Utsa meets with the shelter advocate to talk about going home. She has learned that the forensic evidence won't be back from the crime lab for 3 to 6 months and that there won't be any further action from the police and prosecutor until that happens. She is faced with going back to the village to live and work side by side with the man who raped her and who knows she is cooperating with the police. She is afraid that his friends or family may hurt her or her family. She worries about what the community will think and is embarrassed because they all know what happened. The advocate talks with her about safety planning and developing a support base to help keep her safe when she goes home to her village.
Safety planning is a real art form in the villages. The resources that are available are so much more limited than resources for communities that are connected by roads. Many villages, communities have no resident law enforcement. And there's the power of small town politics. Utsa's situation is a good example. I told her auntie had called while she was away and that her auntie is going to have fresh fry bread waiting for her when she returns. Her auntie's an elder in the village, and she'll have a lot of support.
I was at the support group, and what Atsa said made me think of the old story my mother used to tell me. It was the Heart of the Grizzly story. I remembered how strong we were supposed to be. We both laughed, because we know we are strong, but we get frustrated, and everyone expects us to take it, and still keep our chins and spirits up. I gave her this pin I had, so she could remember that story and what a fierce spirit she has.
Utsa flew home that day, a little older and a little sadder than she had been just a few weeks before. But she was stronger too. She understood more about who she was and what she was capable of. For the first time in a long time, she believed strongly about her right to be safe and to be treated with dignity and respect.
Racism and oppression and sexual violence are powerful forms of destruction. When we internalize oppression, we find today that we're poisoning our own babies in our wombs, and we must ask why. If we look into ourselves for a solution, that requires action, and that action is what quells silence and apathy, which causes racism, oppression, and sexual violence to flourish. It is also no accident that the story of creation and how the Creator made the first Yupik man and woman, and how the Creator also made the grizzly bear. That animal was made to protect and defend, and it was made from the soul of a jealous Yupik woman. Southwestern Yupik women have a philosophy that there are three things that are mine that you cannot touch, and they're in order. One is my children, the second thing is our fish, and the third thing is our laundry. So with the story of the creation of the grizzly bear, which was created from the soul of a jealous Yupik woman, what that says to me is that we inherently have within us that strength to stop sexual violence and oppression. Every day and in each village, we hear more and more Native women standing up and saying, "No more, no more, no more." And we hear it every day.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle?